I hope that everyone has had a lovely evening thus far. This is Atmospheric Alex here with another update on Hurricane, soon to be Major Hurricane Helene, as it tracks across the Gulf of Mexico and rockets inland here, bringing significant impacts across the board. Now, due to the severity of these impacts and the amount of details we're going to go through, this video may end up being a little over a half an hour long. I do apologize for that, but we do have to go over everything as much as possible. And hopefully I'll remember to add special chapters to this video, so you can easily go to the description and find the part of the video that you're most interested in. So here we are taking a live look at Hurricane Helene right now, as it consolidates a very well-defined intercore structure this afternoon. Look at all the swirliness that is going on there, and just the latest frames. I would like to note some new convective bursts that are firing up down here that are going to rotate around the center. So this is about to rapidly intensify if it isn't already. And we are going to take a look at an aircraft reconnaissance mission into the storm to figure out what on earth it might be doing. Now for our current cone of uncertainty, as you can see, there's a large M right there well before it makes landfall. The National Hurricane Center now expects this explicitly to become a Category 4 hurricane here well before landfall. So we are trending back towards our higher end scenarios again. That is quite unfortunate news here, especially for the Big Bend region of Florida, as this could end up being quite historic for those areas. We will talk about that here in just a minute. But before that, Helene currently has maximum sustained winds of 85 miles an hour and is moving north at 12. So this is on track here, and good props to the National Hurricane Center thus far for a very accurate prediction. So here is your peak storm surge forecast, and I really want you all to take this in for just a minute here. We are talking about a very large system, all right? Helene's going to be huge when it blasts up through here. And so you could imagine your intense southerly winds drawing tons of water in, and just how large it is. You're going to be seeing upwards of almost 40-foot waves crashing on shore, and this likely is going to cause upwards of 15 to 20 feet of storm surge. This is a very rare and potentially historic situation for the Big Bend region, and any people who may live in that area, I highly urge that you evacuate now, just so you don't get caught in those storm surge waters there. And to give you an example, 20 feet, we're basically talking about a 2-story house at that point. There will probably be rescues from rooftops with this system, so geez, you need to really brace for impact here. If you're riding out the storm, find higher ground if you can. This looks quite menacing, this looks quite formidable for these areas as well. And we're going to talk about places further off to the west here. 10 to 15 foot storm surge as well, 6 to 10 feet. Going to Apalachicola, you need to be on high alert as well, because 10 feet, while it's not as much as 20, is still very significant there. And that goes a little further off. And people further down, like the Suwannee River, down there, 10 to 15 feet. Going to Anclote River. And really, even the Tampa Bay region, 5 to 8 foot storm surge. So if you wish to evacuate, that is up to you. I'm not urging you to. But like I have said, folks up in these specific regions here need to take this extremely seriously. I am not playing around with this storm. And again, 20 feet of storm surge. That is truly life-threatening there. I hate using those terms, but this has uptrended substantially over today. So please be on high alert there. Okay, and now we're going to look at our key messages here. So we're talking about a catastrophic and deadly storm surge is likely along portions of the Florida Big Bend coast, where inundation could reach as high as 20 feet above ground level, along with destructive waves. You heard it here first from the National Hurricane Center. This storm is not one to mess around with, and honestly, might be a little bit for the ages. It is a quite rare situation. There's also a danger of life-threatening storm surge along the remainder of the west coast of the Florida Peninsula. Alright, residents in those areas should follow advice given by local officials and evacuate if told to do so. So listen to your local officials there and do not mess around. And you don't believe me? Well, here is your wave height forecast from the GFS model. And just take a look at this here that we are seeing. Talking about upwards of 40-foot waves that is pounding towards the coastline here. And with the shape of the coastline, shaped as a bowl, your water is going to get funneled inwards, okay? 40-foot waves may turn into 50-foot waves in this area. That's why storm surge will be such a huge concern. And the larger and the stronger this system is, the higher the storm surge forecast will become. Okay? So you need to be taking this seriously. Rarely do I ever start raising my voice over stuff like this, but my gosh, over my years of, tracking these tropical systems, I don't think I've ever seen something quite this intense. It's quite an exceptional system here. And saying one last thing about these storm surge concerns is that you need sandbags if you're along the coast. If you don't know where to find them, I'd highly recommend going to your local church, maybe community center, your recreation center. They might be giving them out there, especially in situations such as this, when you're talking about 20-foot storm surge. Okay, now let's try and take it down a couple notches here. It's been quite the information. Here's the half-day hurricane model, and you could see it really exploding overnight tonight, and yeah. So this model here showing potentially a Category 5 landfall in the Big Bend region. If you recall with the thumbnail that I made at the beginning of this video, you would notice that my cone is a little further east of the National Hurricane Centers. That's because some of the guidance that has been coming out today. This will obviously change, but that's where I'm kind of favoring the landfall to be. So this would be insane for storm surge, and then we'll get to inland impacts later. Now, latest run of the half-day, because that was the previous one, shows only a 941 millibar low pressure system. That's because Helene's been getting dry air entrained inside of her today and not been doing the best, but she is recovering now. But one thing to note is the size of the system. This thing is huge on the half-day. And let me tell you, you would be seeing copious amounts of storm surge here in a lot of areas in the Big Bend here, so please keep that in mind. Now with your halves B for Helene, this is the older run, and you could see it really rapidly intensifying there. High in Cat 4, low in Cat 5 landfall there. Same areas. I mean, my goodness, a little further west, so more storm surge concerns, okay? I cannot stop driving that point home. I really can't. And then let's look at our latest run here. This one in particular explodes Helene before making landfall in the Big Bend as a Category 5. So that was an uptrend on that particular model. We're going to be seeing these uptrends and downtrends, and it'll just throughout the cycle of the storm in general. But it does make a powerful landfall there. Storm surge again. Huge issue. HMON model as well is suggesting a very powerful high-end Category 4 landfall, extraordinarily large storm. My gosh. So you need, to have concerns here, especially. And because we don't have all the time in the world, we're going to speed through, look at our HWRF model here. And you could see big time Category 5 landfalls. So as of now, I am raising my intensity forecast to a mid and Category 4 hurricane, previously from before here. But okay, Alex, so are you going to show us the inland impacts now? Or are you just going to leave us wondering? Yes, I'm going to show you them right here, right now. This moves on shore, doesn't weaken much. Very strong Category 4 going into Georgia here. Still, it's hard to believe. Look at this. Going into southern Georgia, more into central Georgia, a very powerful Category 2, if not a Category 3 hurricane still exists here as this moves up and over, moving incredibly fast here. And this particular model, I wouldn't say it's most accurate, shows a bona fide Category 1 hurricane moving into East Tennessee here, going into Friday morning. Might be getting a little excited because this is exactly where I am, so it'd be interesting to see what this does. Also, a little bit unnerving, though. This place cannot handle a tropical storm, let alone a hurricane. This blows straight up here into the plateau, where, goodness gracious, you have very powerful mountain wave winds here screaming at 60 to 70 miles an hour out of the southeast. And a good way to view this product is by taking a cross-section, of course. I usually don't do this, but we're going to go on to normal wind, and this is a new thing I like to use here. As we're looking at our winds over the mountains, you can see kind of your bumpy look to the winds as they go over the tallest mountains here. Like Clingman's Dome, Mount LeConte here. Look at it crashing down there closer to the surface. And I am expecting damaging winds radiating outwards from this particular spot. So, areas along the mountains, I'm going to go a little localized here on this one, right? Right, areas along the mountains and the foothills, Pittman Center, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, getting into Jefferson City, Dandridge, portions of Newport as well, and even going further off into northeast Tennessee, southeast Tennessee, Maryville, Townsend. You really need to monitor mountain wave concerns here, as with such a tight pressure gradient, all this wind, guess what, is going to get zoop, zoop, just funneled down those mountains, so please be on high alert across those areas. Now let's take a look at your improved cone of uncertainty, and you can see here we have a ton of warnings in effect. Hurricane warnings going into central Georgia, tropical storm warnings. I'm quite surprised they haven't extended these into East Tennessee yet. I think we're going to see probably an extension here in a few hours. Probably just over here if I were to guess. So, very small sliver there will probably get included. But these tropical storm warnings, again, are for significant inland impacts here. And you can still see tropical storm by the time this thing reaches Nashville. Absurd, if you ask me. Now, what does your National Hurricane Center think about this? Well, let's watch it here. Starting off with the Florida landfall, potentially catastrophic hurricane force winds are expected within the eyewall of Helene when it makes landfall in the Florida Big Bend region late Thursday. Okay, we talked about that already. And the storm surge. I cannot stop saying that, okay? Again, never seen storm surge that high in an NHC forecast, to my knowledge. Preparations to protect life and property should be completed by early Thursday, okay, where tropical storm conditions arrive. All right, damaging and life-threatening hurricane force winds, especially in gusts, will penetrate well inland over portions of northern Florida and southern Georgia. Late Thursday and Thursday night. All right, hurricane warnings are in effect. Strong wind gusts are also likely farther north across portions of northern Georgia and the Carolinas, particularly over the higher terrain of the southern Appalachians. That'll probably spill down a little bit like I just got done saying. So significant impacts across the board. No matter where you live, it seems like you're not going to escape this in the southeast. Let's talk about your rainfall now from Helene. We're talking about upwards of a foot down here along the Big Bend region. Yeah, maybe more into the Florida Panhandle, more than that. And significant flash flooding across the majority of the southeast here, and especially Georgia. And we're talking about 8 to 10 inches, possibly near Atlanta. But I want you to focus your attention right in these areas. I'm going to highlight this in red. Look at all this in here. This is in western North Carolina. we are talking about upwards of 12 to 16 inches in most spots, but in some orographic basically means your clouds banging into the mountains and lifting upwards, squeezing out all the rain as it goes down. Those areas in particular. Some of these areas could see upwards of 16 to potentially 24 inches of rain. That is a lot. That's about 2 feet of rain. So I said this last video, if you live near any small streams, creeks, full-on rivers, then you need to consider potentially getting out of that region for just a little bit of time until the rain and the floodwaters subside. Now again, that is up to you, but even in these areas speckled in pink, if you live there, you might want to leave early, just on the safe side. This rain will be coming in fast. And thus, we have a moderate risk here of flash flooding across a lot of the southeast, like I said. We're talking about portions of the Florida Panhandle. We're talking about into eastern Alabama, basically all of Georgia, some of northern and northwestern South Carolina, western North Carolina, I just want to emphasize, and even in those areas, you have a high risk for flash flooding. That is the highest risk category, upwards of at least 70% chance here. Well then, how much rain may you be seeing out of future Major Hurricane Helene here as it tracks across the southeast? Whoa, that is a lot. We're talking, this is from the NAM model, so it might be overdone slightly, but we're talking about 10 to 14 inches of rain in localized spots across central Georgia. Western North Carolina, I'm actually going to zoom the map in completely here, so you can get a better look at it, and I'm going to highlight it in pink here. These areas in here, according to the NAM model, could see upwards of 20 to 30 inches of rain. Wow, that is substantial. Again, picture living in one of these areas along the mountains where you have a creek nearby. So, localized spots, you need to get out of there as soon as you can. I'm being serious with this. And if that's not enough, even outside of there could see a lot of rain as well. But just keep in mind, and especially this, do not go in the mountains. Alright? I don't know why I would have to say that, but you're about to see an even better reason why you should stay clear away from those mountains. Now, here's a model I think might be doing Helene's precipitation rates correctly. The ARW model, and we're going to see it here as she makes landfall. It looks like around 6 to 10 p.m. tomorrow evening along the Big Bend. We've been saying this. And look at it moving inland. Look at this core. This thing still looks substantial. And you could even see an eye going on shore, a well-defined eye wall as well. And you're probably thinking, well, this has got to die off, right? A lot faster. Not really. Look at this, heading towards Atlanta. There's your eye. There is your remnants of your eye wall in Atlanta, Georgia. And this is moving due north right here. Take a look at this. Big time substantial impacts here. Just across the board, especially in these flooded regions here in western North Carolina, could see exceptionally heavy rainfall rates, a lot of thunderstorm activity as well in these outer and inner bands. You know, perhaps you could even call it your eye wall. Still, it's insane to think about, but this is going to bring substantial impacts. And even supercells. Where do those guys come from? Well, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Well, what did I say? We have a 10% risk for tornadoes coming up tomorrow. And that's essentially an enhanced risk there. We are expecting a possible tornado outbreak unfolding here in portions of far southeastern Georgia and far eastern southeastern South Carolina as we get these bands that move on through that area from Helene. Well, what does your future radar look like for South Carolina, portions of Georgia, and North Carolina? As I just showed you, the tornado risk here, look at this. So nothing really yet, but as we head, into tomorrow afternoon, You see a lot of well-defined banding features moving on shore, some hooking signatures there as that continues. And oh boy, yeah, take a look at some of these signatures here. We've got well-defined hook echoes. Look at your Athens there. We got a few Orangeburg, Charleston, and even one near Augusta. So these are going to be very vigorous here and will likely contain extremely strong rotation. This band moving onshore specifically has strong tornado potential for sure. Charleston, geez. Hope this small run doesn't come true. That'd be right on your doorstep. Have some strong water spouts offshore as well. And yeah, this band in particular, this outer band looks serious. And just take a look at that. Oh boy, a lot of hooking signatures here. This one here, that is well defined. Got one there. A lot of water spouts offshore. Just take a look at these tornadoes here that could unfold, which is why an outbreak is definitely possible out of this system. Late Thursday night, early Friday morning, Myrtle Beach, yeah, Lumberton, Wilmington, that's a classic discrete textbook supercell. Please be on high alert. Turn your emergency alerts on your phone here, and also if you have a NOAA weather radio, activate that as well. Turn it on. You need to be woken up if there is a strong tornado barreling down your street. These bands continue to escalate and even intensify going into North Carolina. Could be quite the night, couldn't it? Okay, now for your future wind gust forecast. We're going to look at several models here. This is your last feature. Helene coming up out of the Gulf here. These wind gusts, 104 miles an hour. Nope. Try 150 to 160 when this makes landfall in gusts, okay? Staying winds likely between 130 and 140, so HRRR way downplaying this, and you got to remember that because look at that. Southern Georgia here, talking about almost 100 mile an hour wind gusts. So this is underdoing it still, and that's the concern that I have. This inner core moves much further north, impacting much of Georgia, going to South Carolina. 50 to 60 mile an hour winds, impacting portions of East Tennessee. This model is an outlier, as it is a lot further to the east. Still see upwards of 50 mile an hour gusts, depending on your terrain features. You know, if your winds are coming more out of the east, there will be less of it, like right within here. So just be mindful that that area becomes hard to forecast in these situations. Now here's a look at your RRFS or your RUFS model here, and you can see a lot more well-defined here, coming in at 120, 130 mile an hour wind gusts here. A lot more realistic, swirling onshore there. Still not strong enough though, and that's very important when we're talking about inland impacts. We're seeing 100 mile an hour winds blowing into southern Georgia, still clocking upwards of 90 miles an hour in central Georgia there. Just, this seems like it's straight out of a movie, doesn't it? This is insane. It continues moving north, 80 mile an hour winds in North Georgia. And as this heads into East Tennessee, we're talking 50 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts and an extraordinarily powerful mountain wave high wind event here. Upwards of 90 mile an hour wind gusts in the mountains flowing northward here. Talking about probably upwards of 70 in your foothills and 50 to 60 in your intermediate foothills regions as well. And gap flow favored locations. And alright, I know I'm going to get flack for showing this, but I might as well do it anyway. This is your NAM 3 kilometer wind gust forecast. And there's no way your system's going to be that consolidated. Come on. 157 mile an hour gusts, that is actually accurate. Which is nothing short of concerning, to be honest with you. Because if that's accurate, well, let's take a look at your inland impacts. We're talking about wind gusts upwards of potentially 110 to 120 miles an hour in southern Georgia here. And this blows northward. Central Georgia, we're talking about wind gusts upwards of potentially 90 miles an hour. That's been a little consistent there. North Georgia, upwards of 90. Getting into East Tennessee, this particular model, I'm going to say this particular model, all right? This isn't the blend of all models or anything like that. This is the high-end scenario. Still plausible, but kind of unlikely. 60 to 70 plus mile an hour wind gusts here across the majority of East Tennessee. In the mountains, gusting upwards of 90, and some of your valley locations there potentially getting upwards of 75 to 80. Again, this is really a high-end scenario. Do not take that seriously. FV3 model is a very low-end scenario, and I'm just going to speed through this. Still, your low end is still 75 miles an hour there, and getting on into 70 across central Georgia. Still shows upwards of 60 mile an hour winds for portions of eastern Tennessee, north of I-40 more than likely. That would seem more reasonable. Strong mountain wave event, but looking at your ARW now, this is a little more realistic. 130 mile an hour gusts coming inland on Florida, still nowhere near strong enough. Inland impacts, upwards of 90 to 95 mile an hour wind gusts into southern, into central Georgia. Heading into North Georgia, upwards of 70 to 80. And then into East Tennessee, this is probably your mid-range scenario of 60 to 65 miles an hour here in your valley. And streaming into your mountain wave locations, again, 50, 60 miles an hour. Now for another high-end scenario, this is your NSSL model, or your ARW2. 140 mile an hour gusts moving on shore. This is extraordinarily accurate here, so please keep that in mind. Blowing onshore into Georgia. Central Georgia is still seeing over 100 mile an hour winds. That's kind of aggressive if you ask me. Even into the mountains, and wow, yep, right into here. Upwards of over 70 mile an hour winds across the entirety of East Tennessee. That is a little too aggressive in my opinion. Even clocking it upwards of 90 miles an hour, getting up there into the valley. Nah, I don't think so. And 70 mile an hour gusts off the mountains here. Whew. That's it for today's video. Goodness, okay, I think we're finally done with all that. Looks like Helene isn't, though, because we're about to see definitely rapid intensification with a strong inner core. I do expect an eye to pop out of this thing probably less than 12 hours from now. So if you are, like I said, anywhere along the Florida Peninsula, into the southeast, like Georgia and portions of South Carolina, you need your preparations finalized. This is going to be a very significant impact. And your storm surge. Thank you all so much for tuning in to today's video. If you did enjoy, please smash the like button. Feel free to subscribe to my little corner of the weather community. Share this with friends and family, maybe in social media. And be sure to ring the bell notification icon to know when I upload next. And with that being said, stay safe out there, everyone, and have a wonderful night. Please do not worry. That's the worst thing. Panicking is the worst thing you can do. So again, don't be scared, but be prepared for this.